Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mary if you're new here, and today's video is going to be another weekend reading vlog.
I should have told you that I loved you one more time.
So it is 5:30 on a Friday, which means it's time to start this vlog. And this weekend I have a theme. I'm going to try to read all of the Lord of the Rings in a weekend. I know Kira Foster did this where she tried to read all of them in 24 hours. I'm not going to try to do that. I definitely don't think I would make it, and I've never read these before, so I'm interested to see how I'll get along with the language in it. Pretty sure everyone knows what The Lord of the Rings is about, but if you don't, it's set in this fantasy world by J.R.R. Tolkien about this set of rings. I don't remember exactly how many there are off the top of my head, but each of the sects of this world gets a ring, but then there's another ring that was made that controls all the other rings, and it shows up in the Shire, and this hobbit, together with a group of men, elves, dwarves, etc., has to return the ring to Mordor and burn it in the fire to melt it down so that this, basically the evils that come from this ring, which is just like power hungriness and war and all this, the atrocities that go with that, the goal is to destroy all of that. So it's written, and it was originally published, I looked it up because I was confused, but it was originally published as 3 works. I have the movie cover copies. But it's the same thing. The first one is The Fellowship of the Ring, which is obviously where I'm going to start, but I've heard that it helps to read this as if it's one book rather than expecting it to be a first book, a second book, and a third book, because it's not, from what I've heard people say, each book doesn't have its own, like, arc as much as we expect now in a first book in a series, to sort of have some sort of conclusion but still end up with a cliffhanger. I've heard that it feels very much like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I am going to try to read it that way as a single work that's, I think it's 1,100 pages altogether with my copies. So that's not the most I've ever read in a weekend, but it is quite a lot to read. So I do want to start. I'm trying to get about 100 to 150 pages in tonight so that I can spend the bulk of tomorrow reading, and then I've also heard that it's helpful to use the audiobooks. I know they're all available on YouTube, so I'm going to try to take advantage of that and listen to them while I do other things around the house tomorrow. And then Sunday is the Super Bowl, which I'm not a big football fan, but I do enjoy Super Bowl snacks. So I think we're planning on making that queso with Velveeta and Rotel, and then probably a few other things. But yeah, we'll just see what we end up making. I probably won't watch very much football, but I do enjoy the commercials, and I'll probably read this while Matt is watching football because he really wants to watch it. He's a big Chiefs fan. But that's it for the intro to this video. I'm gonna start reading and see how far I can get. Hello, it's later. It's like almost 11 o'clock, and I am about 150 pages into this, so it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would, but that's okay. I'm really enjoying my time with it. They are at Tom Bombadil's house. So, about 150 pages in, like I mentioned. That means I have about 300 pages left of this, because this one's about 450 pages. I'm hoping I can get through the 2 towers tomorrow, or at least I'm gonna finish this hopefully tomorrow and get a significant amount into the 2 towers so that I can start Return of the King on Sunday and just read that all day Sunday. That's sort of my tentative plan, but I just wanted to check in and let you know that I've been listening to this as an audiobook, and that's been really helpful. I wanted to get 150 pages in today, and I did, so I'm pretty happy with my progress. I might pick it up again a little later if I'm feeling like it, but right now I'm good with where I'm at, and I think I'm just gonna chill for a little bit for the rest of the evening and probably go to bed kind of early because I'm a little tired. But yeah, I just wanted to check in one last time, and I'll probably see you tomorrow.
Lights flash in the dark. I know you're coming back, aiming at my heart.
Good morning. It's Saturday, and I just wanted to check in. So I have been up for a few hours now, and I've read about 100 more pages of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, not quite. I'm 220 pages in. I'm on chapter 12. And so I'm at the part they've met Aragorn at Aragorn.
Aragorn. Aragorn.
Is that how his name is pronounced? Or Strider, which I didn't know in the book they actually refer to him as Strider for a lot longer. Like I mentioned, I've seen the films a bunch of times throughout my life. But I've only seen the films, I haven't read the books before. In the movies, they only call him Aragorn, really. They don't really mention him as Strider, except for at the very beginning when they first were introduced to him. But they met him at the Dancing Pony, I think was the name of the inn. And now they're traveling with him, and they've been traveling with him for a few days, and they're still trying to find Gandalf. And they just ran into the Wraiths again. I'm thinking about looking into this because the Wraiths are referred to in the book over and over again as Black Riders, and I guess, my assumption of that was that it was a description of them being cloaked in dark clothing, because they constantly say that they can't see their faces, and in the movies they're sort of presented as wearing like black cloaks and riding black horses and stuff, but I don't know, because this book makes it almost seem like they're being described as just being black people. So if that's a thing, then I'm gonna have to look into that and see. It's just, I can't tell if I'm reading too far into it or if that's a thing, because I know Olivia from Olivia's Catastrophe, I don't know if she's talked about it with Lord of the Rings, but I know she was mentioning that there's a lot of like blatant racism in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and subsequent books of that. I never read that series. I read the first book, but I watched the like BBC edition of the first 3 films, and that was pretty much it.
And what, pray, are you?
My name's Edmund.
I know that she mentioned that that's a big problem in those books. And I know there's conflicting views about like the time that something was written, and you have to take that into account, but then also like racism was bad then too. It just wasn't called out, and people accepted it, but just because you accept something doesn't mean it's okay to do. Anyways, that's a whole discussion that I'm not prepared to have right now, but I just wanted to mention that I did notice that. So if you are familiar with The Lord of the Rings and you think I'm looking too far into it, you can let me know that down below. But also if that's something that is commonly talked about in communities that discuss The Lord of the Rings or like classic fantasy circles, I'm not really sure. I would love to know that as well. But yeah, I just wanted to update you. That's where I'm at. I think we're going to go grocery shopping today. It's Saturday. We usually go on Sundays, which I know is like the worst day to grocery shop. But if you go before 11 a.m., the church crowd hasn't let out yet, so you're usually okay. We're going today because we need to pick up some beer, and you can't buy alcohol on Sunday. At least where I live in Arkansas. I think in some counties you can, but not in my county. But where was I going with that? Oh, so we're going to go grocery shopping today, and we wanted to beat the Super Bowl rush. I don't know if there will be a lot of people grocery shopping tomorrow, but I imagine for like Super Bowl snacks. We even got some of our stuff for Super Bowl snacks last weekend, because sometimes our Walmart will run out of certain things that are like commonly used. So we're going to grocery shop for the week and stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to check in and let you know where I'm at with reading. And I'm just going to read some more today. So I'm still hoping that I can finish the first book and get through most of the second book. But as you can see, I'm like halfway through, and I've got a lot to go before I'm going to be like finished with it. So I do find that listening to the audiobook, which is available for free on YouTube, I'll link it somewhere so you can watch it or listen to it if you're interested. I think that's really helpful, and it's a very well produced audiobook. I think I'm going to make a video about books that are good to listen to as audiobooks and books that are not good to listen to as audiobooks, because I frequently listen to audiobooks as a way to get through books faster, and it does impact my experience reading. I think this is a great book to read as an audiobook because there's like sound effects and there's different actors doing different voices and they sing the songs that are in the book. But that being said, the audiobook also I think is longer than it would take me to physically read this. It's a 17-hour audiobook, but I listen to audiobooks on 2 times speed. I probably mentioned that 100 times, but even still, it's taking me a lot longer to listen to the audiobook than just to physically read. So I think I'm gonna do some physical reading for a little bit and try to read maybe 2 more chapters, or just as far as I can before we go to the store. But yeah, I just wanted to check in and let you know where I'm at with that, and I will check in again with you soon when I have more thoughts. I've moved my camera to be facing this way because I think it's really cute that my dogs are just laying back here. Hi, Murphy. Marvel's over there too. I don't know if the vlog doesn't see Marvel as often as I see Murphy because Marvel's not really as needy. But I have some exciting news. It is that I finished The Fellowship of the Ring. So this took a lot longer to read than I thought it would. It's currently 8 p.m. on Saturday. And I've started the Two Towers. So I'm on chapter 4, Treebard, which is really exciting.
That is not correct.
I do have some thoughts just on the Fellowship. So the first book really is just following the beginning of the journey. And it's letting you know how the ring got into Bilbo's possession, how it then became Frodo's responsibility, and sort of how Frodo ended up on this journey with Sam and Merry and Pippin, and how they meet Aragorn, and like how they meet Legolas and all of that. I wouldn't say that I thought it was boring. I do think it's kind of slow to start because there's a lot of background information that you need to make it make sense, if that makes sense. And so for that reason, I don't think I found it hard to get into, but I did just feel like it was a lot of exposition and a lot of this is what's happening. And the action doesn't really start, in my opinion, until they get to Rivendell? Now that I'm saying that out loud, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Where the elves live. That's when they meet Gimli and Legolas, and the Fellowship really starts. Prior to that, it's just sort of like these hobbits trying to figure out what to do.
What about breakfast?
You've already had it.
We've had one, yes. What about second breakfast?
And each of them knowing bits and pieces. And I do think there's like interesting bits before that, but the book is just, obviously it's just an epic journey is the whole book. And I am really enjoying it. I think the world building is great. I also really enjoy the character dynamics and the character relationships, and I think you get a good glimpse of what each of the characters is like. But I did find it kind of odd the way or where the first one ends and the second one picks up. The first book ends with like a big event, and the second book starts with a character death. And in the movies, I'm pretty sure they move the character death to the first film, which to me makes a little more sense, just because otherwise it kind of feels like it's starting out of nowhere. Fellowship of the Ring ends with the Fellowship splitting up. But the second book follows one half of the Fellowship versus Frodo and Sam are on their own. And it's now going to follow them in two different paths. And we actually haven't gotten to Frodo and Sam's part. And I honestly don't know if they're even in the second book, because I feel like I remember hearing someone say that was one of the things that's weird about this book being a sequel, is that it's not about the main plot. It's about other like characters and like a side plot. So I'm interested to see that again. It definitely is that way so far, which is fine. And I am really enjoying it as well. But I do think, all of that to say, that I do think that what I've heard about it, considering it one book helps, I think that's true. Because I don't think it's a complete narrative on its own. And from what I remember of the movies, which I don't know if it's great to compare the movies to the books all the time, but it's all I have to go off of really. What I remember of the movies is the first book, or the first movie, being a lot of exposition and a lot of setting up the story and introducing the characters, which the book was as well. And then the second movie just being constant action. And so far the book is very action-packed. They've already fought a couple of different sects of orcs. And that's what I remember of the second book, it being very focused on the conflict between the different races. I am enjoying that so far. And I'm interested to see, because the third book, or the third movie, is my favorite movie of all of them. And it's the movie that I've seen the most times. So I'm interested to see how I'll feel about the rest of the books. Obviously, I'm not very far into this. So as I get farther along, I'll let you know. I will not finish this tonight, unfortunately. That was my plan. It took me so much longer to read the first one than I thought it would. Again, I do think listening to it as an audiobook helps. I read faster than the double speed of the audiobook, but the audiobook is so immersive that it really helps to get what's going on, and I can do other things while I listen to the audiobook. Obviously, that's the benefit of an audiobook. But I just want to check in, give you my initial thoughts of how I'm feeling, and hopefully I can finish this tomorrow. I'm confident that I will at least finish this tomorrow, and I'm gonna use the Superbowl as like reading sprints, which sounds lame, but I like the commercials in the Super Bowl and I don't really care about watching football. I know that it is what it is. I don't care that other people like watching football. My boyfriend's gonna watch the game. I think I'm gonna sit out there with him and read while he watches football. And then during commercial breaks, we'll like chat and I'll take a break from reading. And I'm hoping that that will help me get through a lot of what I'm reading. I'm hoping to have this finished before the game starts. What? Marvel, come here. Marvel, come on. I will check in maybe later tonight. I don't know. I don't want to promise that because I might just go to bed. But I am planning on reading more of The Two Towers tonight so that I can hopefully, like I mentioned, get this finished before the Super Bowl and then read this through the Super Bowl. And depending on how much I have left, I might be reading this on Monday in class. I don't know, not in class, but you know what I mean? But I am hoping I can finish this as well. And that would be awesome. That's my goal, is to finish all of this tomorrow. I wonder if I can get halfway through this tonight. So if I can get to chapter 9 right here. This is where I'm trying to be tonight. I wonder how much more that is on my audiobook. I think I can do it. That's going to be my goal for tonight. This has been a really long update. And I'm not that worried about the updates being long in this vlog because I don't really have very much else filmed. This vlog is pretty much all update, which is fine and great. Also, I've been taking my glasses off because my ring light shines like this when I wear them. I wonder if I could do this. I don't know. But anyways, so that's why I always have my glasses off in updates, but I wear these most of the time. Anyways, that's it. That's my update. I will talk to you guys soon.
On a shadowy sea, the high dim tops and broken pinnacles of old towers forlorn and dark. He turned to Gollum. Do you know where we are? He said.
Yes, Master. Dangerous places. This is the road from the Tower of the Moon, Master. Down to the ruined city by the shores of the river. The ruined city? Yes.
Hello, it's Sunday. It's Super Bowl Sunday, in fact. I don't know which number the Super Bowl is. Also, I'm adjusting my lighting, so that's why it's changing. But it's Sunday afternoon. I accidentally slept until like 11 today. I didn't even stay up that late last night. I was up till like 2. But, I don't know. I guess I was just really tired. I'm not sure what happened. I originally woke up at like 8, and then I was like, oh, I can sleep for a little bit more. And then I woke up again, and it was like 11:15. But I am about 2/3 of the way through with The Two Towers, which means that I should be able to achieve my goal of, my adjusted goal of finishing this before the start of the Super Bowl and then reading The Return of the King throughout the Super Bowl, which I'm really excited about. I think that'll be good. Also, this is so random, but I don't even know if you're going to be able to tell. Is this a thing? Beauty gurus used to do this, right? Oh my god, Murphy, stop licking! It's disgusting. I burnt my finger making a caramel sauce for the cake I made last night. I think I will have inserted a picture of the cake. It turned out that ugly because I don't have cake pans. So it's supposed to be a layer cake because it has a nougat that goes in the middle. I got in a really big bakery mood last night, so I made a payday cake. I'll link the recipe somewhere if you're interested in making it. It's delicious, but it took like 2.5 hours to make. But it was fun. And I listened to the audiobook the whole time, so that was good. But anyways, back to what you're all here for. At the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, the Fellowship divides. And so Sam and Frodo go off by themselves, and the rest of the gang goes off by themselves, and then Merry and Pippin, the other hobbits, get separated from them. And so the first part of this book, you are following the non-hobbits as they're trying to find the hobbits and figure out what happened to them, and they're doing their own thing. Then you start following Merry and Pippin and them meeting up with the Ents and Treebeard, which are basically like giant tree creatures. And I think they're my favorite part of The Lord of the Rings. I like the hobbits a lot, and I like the Ents. I think it's just because those are like the unique creatures to this world. And I'm also really enjoying, and this is my favorite part of the movies as well, Legolas and Gimli's friendship, because elves and dwarves traditionally do not get along in this society, and on this, in this world, but Gimli and Legolas are like buds, and I love that. I love their little I love them getting to know each other. I love them making sacrifices for each other. Like at one point they're with the elves, I think it's the elves of the north, and dwarves, because elves don't get along with dwarves, dwarves are not allowed to see where they live, so they have to blindfold Gimli. And I honestly don't think it was Legolas's idea. I think it was Aragorn's idea probably, but the whole company gets blindfolded because they don't want Gimli to feel left out. And then Gimli becomes the first dwarf to be able to see where these elves live. And I just think that's like, I don't know, I think perhaps an underlying theme of this is like unification for the greater good. I know the big theme of Lord of the Rings is like good versus evil, and there's all sorts of foiled characters to show you that, like Tom Bombadil and Sauron. Anyways, I'm really enjoying that aspect of it, and I really enjoyed getting to see the Ents and hear about how they have this folklore where all the females of their kind, the Entwives, I think is what they're called, are missing. And they don't think they're dead, they just have like moved on to other forests. So the only Ents that are alive are the only Ents that have been alive for like hundreds of years. And there's no hope for them to have like offspring, if that makes sense. And they choose to sacrifice, a lot of them choose to sacrifice their lives for the greater good of this world. I think that's a really like moving point. I really enjoyed that section of this. But at the second half of this, or towards the end of the first half, Pippin and Merry re-meet up with Gimli, Legolas, Gandalf, everybody. And they tell you, like, okay, so Tolkien tells you, like, they told them about the Ents, but then there's other things that Tolkien didn't narrate for us, so we didn't get to live through. So then we then get Merry and Pippin telling the story of what happened. So it's not repetitive, but you just get to hear the stories that both sides are telling each other until the reader is fully caught up. And then the second half of this, we catch up with Sam and Frodo, and they are trying to get to Mordor. They meet up with Gollum, and so it's very fascinating to read this book, because I do think a lot of what's happening in this book is like the middle. It's all the juicy bits of like what's going on, and the third book is probably the conclusion if it's like the movies, like I said. I am really enjoying the second book, and it makes me think, the second movie was always my least favorite, but I like this much more than I liked The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm liking the second book a lot more than the first one, and I'm curious to see if this will be my favorite of the books. But it is kind of odd that if the book is going to do multiple perspectives, it'll switch back and forth between the perspectives, and this just did like catching you up with the perspectives of one side, and now it's going to catch you up from Sam and Frodo to the perspective of the other side, rather than being like chronological, I guess. And I think I prefer that, because to me that makes it less confusing. But I could see if you only cared about one plot line, I do think it would be kind of annoying or frustrating to be stuck for 150 pages of just one plot line that you may not care about. That said, I think Sam and Frodo are the plot that I care less about. But maybe I will change my mind about that as we go on. But like I said, it's almost 1. I think I'm gonna make myself some lunch. It's about 30 degrees, so it's a little bit below freezing, and it's so foggy out. I don't think it's supposed to snow, and I don't know that it's like quite cold enough to snow, but it's like cloudy but bright outside, if you know what I mean. Matt's in the kitchen. I get so self-conscious having to do this when he's out there. But yeah, I'm gonna let you go, get back to reading this, and I will come catch up when I finish it. Hello, I just wanted to check in one more time and say that I finished The Two Towers, and the Super Bowl has not yet started. So I think it's, gosh, I don't know what time it is. It's like 4:30 maybe, or almost 5, which means I'm about 30 minutes ahead of schedule, which is great. So my plan now is to start cooking some things. We're going to make queso and jalapeno poppers for the Super Bowl. It's just me and Matt. I don't know if I said that already, but we're just hanging out. I'm going to read The Return of the King while we watch the Super Bowl, and hopefully get through as much of this as I can. The audiobook for this is 7 hours. At this point, I am not planning on reading or listening to the whole audiobook. Technically, if I listened to it nonstop, I would be able to, it's 14 hours, but it would take me 7 hours to listen to it. I always mess that up. Technically, if I started listening to it now, I think I would finish it by midnight, but I kind of want to just like chill and hang out with Matt and the dogs and like enjoy my Sunday evening. So yeah, that's my plan, is not to listen to the whole thing tonight. although technically I could. At this point, I'm not sure if I'm going to finish this tonight, unfortunately, but if I don't, I'll probably finish it tomorrow, and I'll finish the vlog up when I finish the book up, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just wanted to check in and let you guys know that I did finish the first two, and I'm gonna go make some snacks and start listening to this one, and then throughout the Super Bowl, I'll also be reading and listening to this, and we'll see how far along I can get. But yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is, I mentioned this already, there's a character in the books of The Lord of the Rings. I think I mentioned this, I might not have. There's a character that is in the books of The Lord of the Rings but was not included in the films, named Tom Bombadil.
A certain man in Russia long ago.
And he really, like, confused me. Like, I'd heard of him as a character prior to reading them, just from people who've talked about The Lord of the Rings, and he's supposed to be, like, the epitome of good in this world versus Sauron, who's supposed to be, like, he's the Dark Lord, the epitome of evil. And Tom helps Frodo and the hobbits in the Fellowship of the Ring before they're even, like, out of the Shire, I'm pretty sure. But from stuff, I've, like, looked up a few things about him. Tolkien never, like, he's never, like, said anything about what Tom is supposed to mean or who Tom is supposed to be. And one theory is that Tolkien wrote Tom into the story when this was supposed to be a much more lighthearted, fun tale, rather than it's sort of, like, dark and gloomy in the actual final product of it. But one theory is that it was supposed to be, like, this lighthearted, fun thing like The Hobbit is, which I haven't read The Hobbit, so I can't speak to how true that is. So in that theory, it's just that Tolkien left him in because he'd become a part of the lore, but there's, like, apparently canonically he doesn't even make sense because he's been around longer than Middle-earth has existed. So it's just, like, there's this theory that Tolkien doesn't even really know what he was supposed to do with Tom, so he just sort of, like, left him in there because his part was already in, and then was like, yeah, it's for the reader to decide. And I just think that's hilarious. But yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. I've also looked up a few things. I'm not an expert on this, obviously, because I literally Googled it and read, like, one article about it. But I was mentioning yesterday that I was wondering if there were, like, racial tones, besides, like, dwarves and elves as in races, but, like, human racial tones in, like, the Black Riders, or the not Black Knights, what are they called? I guess Black Riders, I think, which are the Wraiths, and there's not any there that from what I found, but the Two Towers describes the type of men who flock to Sauron and the Dark Lord on their side of the battle, and they're described, one group is described as looking like Middle Eastern or North African, and the other is described as having, like, an East Asian influence, mostly in their clothing, and they all have dark eyes, whereas, like, the elves and even the hobbits and the men of Gondor and Rohan are typically described as being blonde and blue-eyed, so I thought that was really interesting. But there's, like, two different sides, so apparently some white supremacist groups have used Lord of the Rings to, like, justify themselves. I don't really know how that would justify anything because it's fantasy, but I don't know. But then other, like, Tolkien scholars say that they think it was just a product of the times, which, as I've mentioned already in this vlog, that doesn't make it better. But they think that it wasn't necessarily too... First of all, they say that it's not any different than any other fantasy written at this time, where, like, the heroes were typically European looking and the foes were non-European looking, which again doesn't make it better, but I just think it's interesting that is something that's discussed sort of in, like, the scholarly discussion of the Lord of the Rings. But all that to say, I am about to start Return of the King and watch the Super Bowl, and I'll film whatever snacks we eat. We also bought a 5-layer dip at Walmart, which is one of my favorite things in the world. It's like beans, sour cream, guacamole cheese, tomatoes probably. Sometimes there's 7 layers, and I don't know what the other layers are now that I'm thinking about it, but I love me some chips and dips, so that's going to be my evening, but I will probably check in with you one more time before the end of this vlog at least. Hopefully one more time tonight, and then depending on how far along I get in this, one more time after that overall. But yeah, just wanted to pop in and let you know that.
Your
may have guessed by my change in appearance, it is Monday. I did not update you last night, but I did get to, I did not finish The Return of the King on Sunday, so I did not technically finish The Lord of the Rings over the weekend, but I did finish Return of the King today. But yeah, I did finish it, and I have my final thoughts sort of gathered. So overall, I agree with what everyone said about this not being, each of these books not really being a complete book in its own, and I would think of this as one whole work rather than 3 independent works or 3 different books. In fact, if I could get a bind up of all of this, I think that would be my preferred way to consume this going forward. I loved all of them. This is definitely a 5-star series for me, but I actually ended up only giving The Two Towers 5 stars, which was interesting because Two Towers is traditionally my least favorite film, but it was my favorite of the books. Again, The Return of the King, it does the same thing that The Two Towers does, where it follows one group of people for the first half, and then the second part of the second perspective, I guess, for the second half, which I preferred in The Two Towers just because it was all like middle stuff. In the third one, it sort of felt like the first group had their like struggles and then like almost a conclusion, and then it picked up with Sam and Frodo in the throes of their like dangerous situation that they're trying to, with like their task and what they're trying to do. I did just not prefer that. I think maybe just because I'm used to reading more modern books where the split perspective will be in like a few chapters here, a few chapters there, and back and forth, so it's like chronological still. But all of that being said, I think this story definitely, like, I understand why it's a classic, and I understand why people love it. Also, I've fallen into the rabbit hole of like Tom Bombadil stans on Twitter.
He was big and strong in his eyes a flaming glow.
The other thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the books, that I think the movie also suffers from. If you're familiar with The Lord of the Rings at all, then you're aware that Aragorn and Arwen, the elf, end up together. The books don't explain their love story, and from what I can tell, up until they get married, the book doesn't really make it clear, in my opinion, and the films hint at it more, I thought, than the books did, unless I just completely missed it in the books, which is possible, but they're like betrothed, and the book doesn't have any mention of how they meet. That's actually, the story of it is in one of the appendices, so I haven't read that yet, but it's in there. It's just not a part of the actual narrative of the Lord of the Rings story. Instead, there's like an elven like song story thing, but it's about, I can't remember the name. It's about a mortal man who falls in love with an elf, and she chooses mortality over immortality so that she could be with her human lover or whatever. So like that is told, and it's sort of implied that the same thing happens, but I thought it was interesting that the actual story of Arwen and Aragorn isn't actually in here. But yeah, I finished all of it. I stand by what I said about Gimli and Legolas. They're still my like favorite part of the book. I also stand by what I said. I can't remember if I said this to you guys or if I was just talking to Matt about it. I don't like Frodo that much. I love Sam. Sam, in my opinion, is the true protagonist of this whole story. But yeah, I loved The Lord of the Rings, and I do think I would reread it. And honestly, I think if I were to do this again, I would probably listen to the audiobook still. That is, in my opinion, like the superior way to experience this story. So it's extremely time consuming. It's probably what would take the longest, just pure hours wise. But I do think it's worth it because it's so like beautifully constructed. I did love the audio, and like I mentioned, I will have that linked down below so you can watch that if you're interested. Please let me know in the comments down below your hot takes on The Lord of the Rings, and also let me know if you think that Tom Bombadil should have been in the adaptation, or if you are... There are 2 groups for Tom Bombadil as far as I'm concerned. There is the group that just embraces him and thinks he's ridiculous and great, and there's the group that absolutely hates him. And I think I'm leaning towards just embracing it. Just because I think it's hilarious, the discourse that it causes online that I would never have even known about other than like if I had not done this little project and looked into it, because I was so confused as to who that was.
People look at him with terror and the fear.
But to Moscow cheeks, he was such a lovely dear.
But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this weekend and an extra day vlog. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you can watch my other videos. Anything that I mentioned in this video will be linked in the description box down below. Leave me a comment letting me know how you feel about the Lord of the Rings and Tom Bombadil, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!